Long before the Roman Empire rose to greatness, before the marble temples, the crowded forums, and the mighty legions marching across continents, the people of Rome lived in a world where buying and selling was slow, awkward, and often unfair. This was the era of the ease rude, the rough bronze. These were not coins, but jagged, ugly lumps of metal. In the noise of a busy market with traders shouting and animals moving between stalls, it was easy for someone to cheat by shaving off a little metal. Every single transaction required a scale and a suspicious eye. Life was growing more complicated as the city expanded, and Rome needed something better to maintain order among its people. As time passed, the Romans tried to improve this primitive system by creating bronze bars stamped with symbols like cattle or anchors. These bars looked more official and showed that someone in authority had approved them, that they were still large, heavy, and difficult to carry. Imagine trying to walk through a crowded street with a massive metal bar tucked under your arm, hoping it did not slip or get stolen. The city was expanding, its people were trading with distant lands, and its armies were beginning to march farther than ever before. The old ways were no longer enough to support a rising power. Then, around the 3rd century, before the Common Era, Rome changed everything by creating its first true coins. For the first time, money was round-shaped and stamped with symbols that everyone could recognize instantly. These coins were made from gold, silver, bronze, and copper, and each type had a specific purpose in society. Gold coins were used for large state payments, important merchant deals, and rewards for great service to the Republic. Silver coins, especially the famous Denarius, became the everyday heartbeat of the Roman people. Suddenly, buying and selling became faster and more trustworthy. A coin had a set value, and everyone knew what it was worth. But Roman coins were far more than just money. They were the original mass media. Every coin carried the face of the emperor carefully carved, so that even people who lived far from the capital would know who ruled them. A soldier standing guard on the cold frontier in Britain, a merchant selling spices in Egypt, or a farmer working the fields in Spain, all of them held the emperor image in their hands every day. Coins traveled faster than messengers and reached places where no official announcement ever could. They showed victories, temples, and promises of peace. They were tiny pieces of power spreading the emperor voice across the known world. For a long time this system worked perfectly. Rome grew larger and richer than any civilization before it. But even the strongest empires face problems that cannot be solved with swords. This is where the story turns dark. As Rome expanded, it became obsessed with growth. It needed more soldiers to defend thousands of miles of borders and more officials to run its sprawling cities. The cost was astronomical. The emperors found themselves in a trap. They had promised high pay to the legions to keep them loyal, but the silver mines were running dry. They did not have enough silver to pay for the empire they had built. So the emperors decided to commit a crime against their own people. They began the Great Debasement. It started slowly. An emperor would take a pure silver denarius, melt it down, and mix in a little bit of copper. At first it was only 5% copper. The coin still looked like silver. It still felt like silver. But the emperor could now mint more coins than he had metal for. It was a lei made of metal. Over the next 100 years, this poisoning of the coin became an addiction. The silver content dropped from 95% to 50%. By the end, the silver denarius was nothing but a copper coin, washed in a thin, pathetic layer of silver that rubbed off in just a few days in a merchant hand. This was the coin that killed Rome. The government had become the empire's biggest counterfeiter. When the people realized their money was a lie, the world fell apart. This was not a slow decline, it was a total collapse of trust. Merchants refused to accept the fake silver. They hiked their prices to astronomical levels to survive. A sack of grain that once cost 1 silver coin now cost hundreds. This was hyperinflation on a scale the world had never seen. The soldiers, realizing their pay was worthless, turned their swords against their own emperors. Trade stopped. Cities began to starve. The glue of the empire, the trusted silver coin, had turned to lead, and as the money melted, so did the borders. Then came Emperor Diocletian, a leader determined to save the empire from falling apart. He saw the chaos and the fear spreading through the markets. He knew that if people stopped trusting their money, the empire itself would collapse. He tried to fix everything by creating new coins with better metal and issuing a long list of maximum prices to stop merchants from raising their costs. He even tried to force people back into a system of bartering because the money had become so toxic. His reforms were a desperate attempt to bring back the gold and silver purity of the past. While they did not solve every problem, they slowed the decline and gave Rome more time to survive. Even after the Roman Empire eventually fell, its coins lived on as a blueprint for the future. Medieval kings, Byzantine rulers, and early Islamic leaders all copied the Roman tradition of stamping a ruler face on metal to show authority and trust. Today, when a single Roman coin is found buried in the ground, it reveals a hidden story. It tells us who ruled, what battles they won, and exactly how strong or weak the economy was at that moment. The story of Rome is a story of trust built on small metal circles that were strong enough to change history and fragile enough to destroy an empire when that trust was broken. The Roman Empire did not just fall to barbarian swords. It fell because it lost the very thing that made it trade, eat, and breed the purity of its own money. I am Logan, and this is Heritage Treasury. While history books tell you what happened, we show you why it happened. You are among the few who will see the patterns before they repeat, so stay with us as we uncover the truth.